Hey, Bobby, here we are again in this wonderful opportunity to chat with folks. We don't even know who all we chat with, do we?
But we know that we are covering some subjects that are really important for families during
Yes.
this strange pandemic time that we're all trying to get through together.
Now, this is the third of a series of three
Mhm.
that are based on our book, The Marriage
Pioneer.
Pioneers, which we are in a pioneer period with this pandemic.
Mhm. But they have three major ideas that we sort of adopted years ago, and that's what the main part of the book is about.
But we didn't always have that. We were actually married about 20 years before we learned some of these wonderful marriage enrichment skills.
Mhm.
And
The first one, just to remind us of our series,
Okay,
is on couple growth. That you can have it, you can do it.
couple growth and individual growth.
There's a mutual commitment on the part of the couple to growth, and that's for each individual, every family member, and especially for the couple, the us in the relationship.
And I would hope as a parent that every parent would have this as a philosophy and for their children. I want you, my daughter, I want you, my son, to fulfill your potential for growth. And I do not want to be in any way a stumbling block to that. And
So
so,
commitment to growth
yeah,
is kind of the attitude that drives getting close in the relationship, in the family, and staying close. But there are two skills that go with it too. First one we talked about last week, and that was how you talk to each other matters.
yeah.
So communication is part of couple growth.
Now,
And
everybody communicates, but how you communicate matters.
In fact, some people have said you cannot not communicate.
Right.
A slam door is a kind of communication.
But it leaves to the other person what that means. It's not clear.
So using our words is really important to getting close and staying close as couples and families. The second skill, and the one we want to talk about today, is a creative use of conflict.
Right. It's part of couple growth that we are going to have disagreements. Bobby and I, at 63 years, can vouch for that, that we do have disagreements.
Yes, there's going to be trouble, but as we've heard John Lewis, whose funeral happened yesterday, heard John Lewis say, there's trouble, but we want to make good trouble.
Good trouble.
Yes.
Be an irritant in that sense.
Yes, so trouble's going to come, but what we want to talk about today are some ways of handling it and of dealing with it and of not dealing with it.
Yes, and one of the things that David Mace has said about conflict is never waste a good conflict, because behind every conflict there's some deep feelings that need to be addressed, and who better to address them with than the one you love, the one who cares about you.
But you also read me a quotation from David Mace this morning.
Oh, yes.
Something about families. What was it?
Well, it was really from his book, Love and Anger in Marriage. And I'm going to read it. Living in a family group generates more anger than any other social situation in which a person finds themselves.
Okay, and many of us may have experienced that personally during this time of being home more than we ever have been with each other, that families are going to have trouble.
Gives more opportunity for all kinds of interactions. But I'd like to go back to one of the things that I said right here at the beginning about the fact that we'd been married 20 years before we learned some of these marriage enrichment skills. And we came home after our first training weekend, and we found that when we got home, we were going to end up doing things that we had done before.
Yes.
And what had you done? You had, I went to work on that first day
Well,
back.
it was a Monday after our first weekend of a marriage enrichment retreat. And one of the things that had really caught my eye and interest was that quotation that you gave from David Mace about never waste a good conflict.
Right.
I couldn't believe that. Waste one. I didn't even want one.
Oh, and you hadn't for all those 20 years.
I know.
wanted one.
No, my way of handling arguments and trouble in the relationship was to suppress, to
Yes.
deny, to evade,
Yes.
to not have it at all.
And you can do that in so many ways. You can fight, or you can flight, you leave the room, or you can fright, it can scare you, or you can freeze and not do anything. So those are just some of the ways we tend to handle those.
Right. And I guess mine was to withdraw and to not participate in an argument and go away and pout.
Yeah, no
So-
matter how much I wanted to go through an argument and deal with it, you can't do it alone. It takes two people to do it.
Yes, but how you use your words matters too.
Yes.
Well, let's go back to the situation
Yes.
where I had cleaned house, which meant throwing away the many, many magazines that we subscribed to, because you like
I
magazines.
like to take magazines.
Yes, and even a couple of journals that you had brought home from work
That's true.
were not in the outside trash cans, but in a waste paper basket.
And I remember this very clearly, that when I came home, I looked in the basket and I saw some of my journals. So I reached down in the waste bag and I said, in a loud voice,
Mhm.
I said, "Why did you throw my newspapers or my magazines away?"
Mhm. And I didn't like the tone of your voice, so I matched it and said, "What makes you think they're your magazines?"
And then I was going to end the conversation because I paid for them.
And that was so unfair. Not only was he yelling at me, but I worked too. I had a salary. Why did he think it was just his salary that bought those magazines? Now, the most important thing, well, the second most important thing of the evening happened for me. And that was at that moment, I believed that I had an option of what to do. What felt familiar was to check out and say, well, those magazines can stack up to the ceiling as far as I care. I'm not touching another one of them. But that was a lie.
You didn't
And
know.
another option was to cry because you yelled at me, and that was unfair too.
Right.
Another option was to take some of those things that we had just learned that weekend
That same.
and maybe use them. And so the fact that I realized I had an option about how I could handle this was a really important stepping point for me in moving our ability to argue fairly toward a more reasonable end.
Yes. And I think in the long run, you have made this happen for us
How is that?
because you recognized some things you hadn't recognized.
Mm-hmm.
You saw that there were options you hadn't seen before.
Mm-hmm.
So
Well-
I want to credit you for that.
Well, I will accept it. It's
Yes.
something I still work on, as you
Yeah.
know, but how you begin the argument
Oh,
is really important.
yes.
And for me to recognize that it's okay to be angry and
Yes.
nothing bad's going to happen, and that I have an option about what I can do is helpful in a relationship, in a family, with friends, in a business. So that's one of the important things.
Yeah.
The second important thing we went to after we calmed down was
I went into the den and read those two magazines and the journal before they got thrown away.
yes, and I was getting ready for the next day when school started.
Yeah.
And so I came into the den and said to you, would you like to talk about your feelings about magazines? And you laugh now, but
Well,
I realized what a silly question that was.
Well-
What could you feel about a magazine?
Well, what I was laughing about is what I thought. What I thought was, no way do I want to talk about this. Just leave my magazines alone. That's what I thought. But one of the things we had done that weekend was to say we were going to mutually commit our relationship to growth. And I realized, yes, we've mutually committed ourselves to be a growing couple and to learn from everything. So I swallowed my pride and said, okay. But there's another factor in here. It was the gentle way you said, would you like to talk about your feelings about magazine? If you'd said, well, are you serious about this marriage enrichment stuff you want to talk about? I wouldn't have. I wouldn't.
Okay.
And so the tone, as you said earlier, the way we talk matters.
Well, we knew that it was something we had never done before, talk about our feelings about a subject.
Well, you hadn't seen a conflict yet.
Yes.
To own it up.
Not only a new strategy, I knew that I didn't know what to say.
Yes.
So it was with a good bit of apprehension that we went into the bedroom, sat down on the bed, closed the door, got ready.
Not in that sequence, but of course.
Got ready to talk about our feelings about magazines, although neither one of us knew what to say.
That is really true because we hadn't practiced by virtue of not sharing feelings. We didn't know what we felt about things, certainly not about what
magazines.
what we felt about magazines.
So it took a while, but we both were shocked at what we learned, not only about the subject, but about each other. I learned that I went to your house for a visit.
Yes.
The Thanksgiving before we got married at Christmas time.
Right.
And I looked at the stacks of magazines and newspapers and things. Yet your parents couldn't put their car in the garage because it was full of
I
those.
fully agree. My parents just collected everything, particularly my dad.
Depression child, yes.
But I want to add that sometimes you never know when you're going to need some of these things.
Well, you can't keep everything.
Right.
And this is another issue that we continue to work on.
That's right.
Well, I took a picture as a girl, 19 years old, looking at that garage and the house, and I said, I'm not going to let my house get like
right.
People will think I'm a housekeeper. And so I resolved there, no magazines stacking up. Didn't tell you.
No.
But they were a symbol of my housekeeping. And so I wanted them thrown away.
And what I discovered is that when we left and from Shreveport, Louisiana to move to Beaumont as a family, I had a barrel full of toys. And as a 6-year-old, I wanted some of those toys, but my parents left the whole barrel. I had no toys brought with me. And I felt like they were my toys, and I had no choice in whether to bring them or not even to choose 2 or 3.
So you became a man that likes choice.
I like choice.
But think how long that attitude stayed with you. You were 6 when that happened?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's holding a long time to the idea of you need choice. Well, we shared the feelings, and it didn't make one right and reasonable and the other one wrong and unreasonable. They were just what 2 people felt about those magazines.
That's right.
But the issue was still there.
Yes.
What are we going to do about magazines and the number that stack up so quickly?
So one of the suggestions we came up with was that anything that you think I might need or you have a question about, just stack it on the floor on my side of the bed.
Right. You have a choice, but you can't get
These
in
are
the
on
bed.
the way out. You want any of these?
Yes, it gives you choice, but it gives me,
A clearance time.
yes, right. And we probably came to that little simple resolution in about 30 seconds.
Right. But it all happened because we had put the feelings as a team looking at it together. We put the feelings on the table right in front of us. Well, we didn't have a table on the bed, but the whole idea, we worked on it together. It wasn't you against me or anything like that. We were a team looking at it. What is it we are going to do about it?
Mm-hmm.
And that made all the difference.
And that was the second of the big ahas that I got. The first was the aha that I got an option about how I behaved in an argument. And the second was sharing feelings leads to a lot of understanding, because the thing that amazed me about it, I went into that room scared.
I was scared. My stomach was really churning. It made a whole lot of difference to
Not
me.
knowing what to say, not very happy about what had happened between us. And after we shared the feelings, I was shocked at the tenderness that was between us.
Yes.
I understood a little boy, 6 years old, who didn't get to choose his toys to move with him.
But see, I didn't know I felt that until we talked. That's the beauty of sharing feelings, is that you get acquainted with yourself and understand yourself better.
But I like another word that you used there, because I think it's the beauty of this process, is it moves you together as a team to work on the resolution.
Yes.
You have the beginning of the argument that needs to be handled
Addressed.
well. You have the middle of the argument where the strategy is to share your feelings about it
Yes.
and to listen to each other's feelings.
Then a whole separate issue on resolution.
And then it's easier to get to some kind of resolution that's fair for both people, but it becomes teamwork. It becomes our resolution, not, well, okay, have it your way.
And by the way, I don't think you can resolve an issue without the feelings being aired. You got to get the feelings out of your system. They stay inside until you verbalize them. And then, you know what, Bobby, I think we need to stop right here.
Yes.
But it's a pleasure to talk with you today.
About a very important trouble, good trouble.
Yes. So long till next week.
Yes.
Thank you.